Since the pandemic began over a year ago, volunteers at Our Lady of the Snows in Clark Summit started reaching out to the elderly members of their parish community through a program known as Calls of Kindness. More recently, in Holy Week leading up to the celebration of Easter, these same volunteers delivered over 300 Easter loaves of joy to the senior members of their parish community. In our closing segment, we'll talk with the parish's pastor, Monsignor Joseph Quinn, and some of the volunteers about this incredible ministry of love and concern. Monsignor, take us back to the very beginning of this pandemic and tell me a little bit about the ministry that evolved in an effort to reach out to the elderly parishioners of Our Lady of the Snows.
In a parish like ours, and it's not unusual throughout our diocese, we have a lot of older parishioners. In fact, we, for the first time, really went to count how many parishioners were above a certain age, and we were stunned. We have close to 500 people over the age of 75. That's a lot of people, and a lot of people who were isolated and I think wounded throughout all this. And so we kept asking ourselves, what can we do? Early on, as many projects were suggested, none of them could be carried out because of contact issues. So we settled on a project called Calls of Kindness. We formed a group called Hearts That Care, and we had several projects underneath that label. But the Calls of Kindness began over a year ago now, and to date there's probably close to 1,400 calls that have been made by a group of almost 25 volunteers, all parishioners, of course. And we began with the upper end and kept moving back. I believe we had one parishioner, 105. She was thrilled to get a call. This is the one who said when she turned 100, now remember, I'm starting all over again. And they said to her, what do you mean? She said, next year I'm 1. Next year I'll be 2 and 3. And so the reaction was such that it was just the right thing to do. And so we started to make calls on a fairly regular basis. And by Christmas it was clear to us that there were other things that we could do.
And as we approached the celebration of Easter, the same group of volunteers came up with another unique ministry.
We had 30 volunteer bakers. We actually carved out the recipients as 80 years and older, and there's 300 in that category. So the 30 bakers baked over 300 loaves of bread. One of our volunteers is a high school teacher here in the Abingtons, at Abington Heights, chemistry teacher. She and her son, in 7th grade at Baker, baked over 60 loaves of bread themselves. And the loaves were fresh breads, lemon breads, cinnamon breads, blueberry breads, chocolate zucchini breads, wonderful. And then we called in the 7th and 8th grade kids in confirmation, said, how about we make some new service hour opportunities for you? They were thrilled. And they made these cardboard baskets called Easter Loaves of Joy. We would put the loaf of bread in it, fill it up with the straws and candies and colorful stickers and bows, and then the challenge was to deliver them all individually to all 300 homes. And that was pretty amazing.
I believe just knowing the isolation that the pandemic caused, that people didn't leave their homes to do anything. They had groceries delivered in, families couldn't be together. So I think just knowing they were alone and isolated, we just wanted to be able to stay connected and reach out.
And what was the reaction, the feedback you got from these elderly when they received their loaves?
They overjoyed, surprise, shock, like me, you're thinking of me, this is for me. They were just so overjoyed with it and so grateful to be remembered by their parish that it was just such a joyful time for them and for the people making the deliveries as well. They were just so thrilled to see a smile put on someone's face, and some of the volunteer deliveries were made by people that were making the calls all along, so they've been just contacting them by phone. Well, now they got to put a face with a name, and that just meant so much to both the elderly and the person helping with the calling and the delivering.
The vibrant and dynamic connection of mind, heart, and hand is the core of the ministries, I feel, at Our Lady of Snows and their outreach programs. And the Easter of Loaf Joy gathered hands in unity, and I felt their hearts beat in unison. And that's what they project all the time in whatever they do. So that in a time when so many people have found themselves by necessity walking in this journey alone, these acts of kindness with the Easter loaf of bread, with the Easter loaves of joy, have been a testimony to the nature of God's love and the victorious power of His love that was exemplified right here in this parish.
Mrs. Coleman contacted me regarding this project, and she knew that I was a baker and that Nathan was a baker. In fact, Nathan had volunteered to help out with the parish bake sale in place of the summer festival this past year. So she said she needed people to bake bread, and I said, sure, we'll do it. In fact, she didn't know, but Sabrina was also a bread baker, so put her name in for it, and she asked what we wanted to contribute, how many loaves, and we said, well, we'll do about a dozen each. And she said, thank you very much. I asked how many she had to do, and she had quite a few to do, several hundred. And she said, put the word out if you have anybody else who bakes. And then we kind of got back in contact with her because I was wondering if she made her mark for the numbers of breads and she was short. I said, well, we'll make up the difference. So it wound up being well over 60 loaves that together we contributed. We used pretty much all of our free time for about 6 days prior to the day that they were due. Loaves go in about 3 or 4 at a time, and the process, continued until it was time for bed. But I just thought it was a great project, especially from our standpoint, being able to kind of share with the community a talent that we had, and definitely in this time being able to reach out to people who may not get out that much, may not have that connection, as you said.
I felt happy about it. I knew some of my classmates and friends had delivered some breads, and they had told me how happy people were who received. Yeah, it made me learn and understand how if I bake something or do something to make other people feel happy.
Excellent.
That's all the time we have for now. On behalf of the staff at Catholic Television, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and invite you to tune us in again for our next edition of Our Faith, Our Diocese.